Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Two Guys, a Girl, and F1. And these are my race notes for the Monaco Grand Prix. Big weekend, of course, Memorial Day weekend, not just Monaco, but the Indy 500 and the 600-miler at Charlotte. There's just all sorts of racing, and if you're a fan, this is a great weekend to be a motorsports fan. Now, you may be stuck with me this weekend. I'm not really sure. Sabrina is in the middle of moving to a new place to live. So I don't know if she'll be able to get in on all of the fun of this particular weekend, but I've got a lot of notes here that I wanted to share with you because I thought Monaco was an interesting race to a certain degree anyway. It always winds up being a little bit processional, but we all know that Monaco is the crown jewel really of Formula One. And it didn't disappoint when it came to the glitz and the glamour and absolutely blue Mediterranean Sea and the mega yachts. And it's just a spectacular background, and it always is that way, especially when the weather is as pretty as it was this weekend. So without any further ado, let's just kind of jump into my notes here. And the first thing I wrote was, as usual, Sunday's Grand Prix at Monaco was won on Saturday. Lando Norris threw down an incredible qualifying lap in Q3 to snatch pole from a completely frustrated and discouraged Charles Leclerc, who is always quick on his home track. But the lap that Lando threw down, ultimately, no one has ever gone around Monaco that fast. So it was really, really super impressive, especially when you consider how big those cars are and how narrow those streets are. I just thought it was a phenomenal performance by him. Formula One tried to spice up the race by mandating 2 pit stops for the event, but it really didn't do anything to alter the results of the race, since the top 3 qualifiers on Saturday finished in exactly the same positions on Sunday. I thought it was kind of entertaining. They asked Max Verstappen what he thought about it, and he said, well, of course I get it in terms of making sure that we did something to spice up the race, but I really don't think it worked. Quoting Verstappen here, he says, "You can't race here anyway, so it doesn't matter what you do. 1 stop, 10 stops. Even at the end, I was in the lead, but my tires were completely gone, and you still can't pass." I think nowadays with a Formula One car, you can just pass a Formula 2 car around here. We might as well have been doing Mario Kart, and then we'd have to install bits on the car, and maybe we can throw some bananas around. Yeah, I don't know what to do about making it more interesting. So Max was obviously not a fan of the 2-stop strategy. I like the Mario Kart reference, though. One of the things that I'm kind of wondering about is that, Norris's win had to have been a huge confidence booster for Lando, given that Oscar Piastri had won 3 races in a row earlier in the year. And I was sort of expecting the number 1 status at McLaren to eventually shift over to Piastri after those wins. But now Norris has basically stood up and he made a statement. And it's interesting because, as I understand it, the issue that McLaren has with their car, as dominant as it is, it's that the front suspension and the grip levels it provides are a little bit on the unpredictable side. And so Norris has struggled with this a little bit more than Piastri has. And so that's what's kind of penalized him in these early races of the year. But here we are at Monaco, a track that rewards a really positive front end that you can trust. And Norris threw down that amazing lap on Saturday and then drove flawlessly on Sunday. So it seems like maybe Norris has found the handle. Barcelona is next weekend, so we'll get a clearer picture of that, I think. But it was good to see Lando back on top of his game and back on form. Now, at the same time, Red Bull had their weaknesses exposed because they're not very good over the curbs, and everybody knew that. And in fact, Max had said before they ever went to Monaco that he expected to struggle this weekend, which, in Max terms, they did. But he had put it down to a weak front end. And then while that may be true, the other part that people were talking about was how, because you have to use so many curbs at Monaco, particularly through the swimming pool section, that the Red Bull would be at a disadvantage because it's just not that great over the curbs. And that seems to have been the case. On the other hand, Max did a great job of limiting the damage to his championship aspirations because he did score some useful points. And so it wasn't a complete run of the table for Piastri, who, let's face it, he finished 3rd, so he did not score maximum points. So that kind of made it interesting. I also thought that Ferrari did an amazing job exploiting their excellent traction out of slow corners, which, of course, the better your traction, and the Ferrari engine is a good engine, that means you had great acceleration. And since Monaco is what I call a point and squirt circuit, the Ferrari was certainly very competitive. And what I mean by a point and squirt You point it into the corner, and as soon as the car kind of gets itself gathered up from going around the corner, you put your boot in it and squirt out of the corner. That's why we call it point and squirt. And so I felt like Ferrari had a car that was very well suited for Monaco, and it really showed. I mean, both Charles and Lewis did a great job this weekend. Mercedes, man, they struggled. I mean, Saturday is a day that they would like to forget, with Kimi finding the wall, George having engine troubles, and, that pretty well shot their whole weekend. On the other hand, for Racing Bulls and Williams, again, they did very well. They had cars that scored in the points. Both cars from both teams scored in the points. So good for them. I mean, with Williams, it's interesting. We're kind of expecting it. At the beginning of the season, we were like, wow, did you see what Williams did? And now it's kind of like, Williams are kind of struggling to score points. I wonder what's wrong. They have definitely shifted, but it was good to see Racing Bulls do well, and especially Liam Lawson clearly is coming to grips with the the Racing Bulls car, and you can tell he's becoming more and more confident. So it'll be interesting to see as time goes by how he stacks up against Hadjar, who's doing really, really well. I do want to award the Cartoon Anvil Award. It once again goes to Fernando Alonso. That poor guy, it was looking like he was going to finish somewhere around 6th or 7th, maybe 8th, kind of depending how pit stops fell and who did an overcut or an undercut, that kind of stuff. But, he was looking good. His engine let go after the first round of pit stops, and so that was it. He had to retire the car. The good news is, to me, the silver lining as a Fernando fan, is that the upgrades that were brought on the Aston Martin for Imola not only worked at Imola, but they also worked at Monaco, which is, to me, a great sign. And I understand that, according to Adrian Newey, they've got another upgrade package coming next weekend at Barcelona. So hopefully, that's going to be another step forward. And then they have a package coming in for the race at Silverstone in about a month. So that should be very interesting as well. But man, it is time for the two-time world champion to score some points, for crying out loud. And finally, not about the Formula One race, but about the Formula 2 race, I just want to let out a huge shout out and congratulations to our countryman, fellow Texan, and friend of this podcast, Jack Crawford, for winning the Monaco F2 race. How amazing is that? It was a crazy race, lots of carnage and all that, but Jack was very, very smart. He read the strategy perfectly and anticipated a safety car coming out. He took advantage of it, basically made a win out of it. You got to have that to be able to succeed in this sport. So huge congratulations to Jack. Super proud of him. And Cadillac, would you please sign this guy for a race seat in 2026? So that's all I've got. We've got Barcelona coming up in a week. We're looking forward to it. Let's see if McLaren can keep their roll going.